this thing working? No? What the heck's the point of it? It doesn't work.
Oh, there it's working now.
It's working now?
Too noisy. Just talk louder.
Is it working or not?
I can hear you there.
Once you, if you put it on your shirt, it melts in your.
I don't know where it is.
It's on your shirt.
All right, is that better? Can't even get it off. New technology is brighter than I am. Put it right here. All right, now does that work or not?
Better.
Okay. Well, we now have 55 minutes to cover 6.5 hours worth of training. But fortunately, we'll have a break in between there. I want to thank Andy for taking care of the things he did. He covered about 40% of the things that we have to cover in this end of the world. What we're going to be talking about for the remainder of our time here are global grants. And global grants are the really, really big kinds of things that we get to do around the world. And it's where we spend the other half of our DDF. We're going to have the same $65,000 to spend there as we did in district grants. And it's going to be matched dollar for dollar. So we're going to start out with being able to work on projects that are worth over $125,000 just on our end. When we're all said and done, we will probably do something in the neighborhood of $250,000 worth of projects next year, maybe a little more. Before I get into the nuts and bolts of these kind of things, because, and I apologize in advance, but when you're going through a bunch of rules and concepts, there's just not any way to make it seem a whole lot more fun. But I want to talk to you just a little bit about some of the things that we've done over the last 3 or 4 years, thanks primarily to a fellow named Bob Medley from the Oklahoma City Rotary Club. Bob, we had never done one of these kinds of grants before, and it was just as we were kind of getting started. And the interesting thing about it was that the Oklahoma City Rotary Club had been doing international service projects for the last 4 years and were unaware that they could ask the district for most of the money. And Bob just happened to be a neighbor of mine, and he was talking about some of this stuff, and I said, well, Bob, why in the world are you doing this alone? Why don't you come do bigger projects and let us use some of the district money? And he said, oh, that's a really great idea. And so they did a little project using just district grant money 1 year. That's something we didn't cover in the district grant program, but you can use district grant money overseas also. You may have saw on the bottom there, it showed relief supplies for refugees in Macedonia. The Oklahoma City Rotary Club decided that they wanted to do a relief project someplace in Eastern Europe. And they ultimately put together a little over $15,000 worth of donations that were sent over there. But the funny thing about it was we didn't know where to send them. And so we started with our contact in Hungary and said, do you guys need this? And he says, no, we're building a wall, we're keeping them all out, and we're telling them to go someplace else. He says, go talk to the guys in Romania. So we went to see our partners in Romania, and they said, no, we're putting the fence up too, and we're shuffling them off on both sides. But he said, the guys over in Macedonia, they got a real problem over there, so let's do that. And so we teamed up with the Rotary Club that we've done a grant project with over there, and we sent them the money. And they organized the entire project. They arranged to buy the water and the food that was given out. They arranged with the Red Cross, who was running the relief center there, to take care of it for them and see that they got access to the village. And then they went out into the refugee village then with great big Rotary signs, and they gave all of this stuff away to the refugees here. It was like $15,000. And it's something we wouldn't have been able to do had we not had these contacts. Because you're not going to send $15,000 over to a country in Eastern Europe and hope like hell that they don't steal it. But the Rotarians there took care of this for us, and they were Rotarians that we physically met because of the International Grants Program. When Bob was on vacation, getting ready to take a cruise from Budapest to Vienna, I think, someplace down the river, he had spare time to kill, so he went to the Budapest Rotary Club to do a makeup. And he sat down next to a guy named Henning. And Henning was kind of their club's foundation projects kind of guy, and they were talking about what they did and what we could do. And Bob comes back and he says, I had this great conversation with this guy named Hank, and they're doing this great project, and can we do something with it? And I said, sure, just the club just needs to apply. And we ended up doing a project with Hank. And then we ended up doing another project with Hank, and he introduced us to the guy in Cluj. And we did some projects with the guys in Cluj, and they introduced us to the guys in Basco-Raslog, and we did some of those in Basco-Raslog, and they introduced us to the guys in Skopje, and we did a project with the guys in Skopje. And then Bob learned from one of them by a gal named Patrice, who's in Latvia, and she wants to do a hospital project, and so Bob went over and figured out how to do a project in Latvia, and we just got it funding. And there's a few more just like these, but it's a partnership network of now 17 districts, about 50 Rotary clubs that have been put together doing projects together. Every year we do a project now using 5 or 6 or 7 Rotary clubs from around the world to go together and do a really cool project. And there's in Munich, the Englander Rotary Club in Munich participates with $1,000 every year. The Katakoy Rotary Club in Turkey participates at least $1,000 every year. Cluj and Budapest always give $1,000. And where this all works out really neat is that in order to have a project in your own country, 30% of the club and district money has to come from outside your country. And so those of you that have any international connections, now that you're president, your mailboxes will start to fill up from people in India and Nigeria wanting you to send them money because they got to have money from outside the country so that they can have this money. But the neat thing about us is that we have all of these people who are all friends of ours and we all do projects together. And we can say, guys, we need some money because we're doing a project, and they'll send the money to us. And we'll go into this in a little more detail when we get there. But the thing that makes us different than almost everybody else is when we do a project in a foreign country, we send a team over there for the dedication. And so every time we do a project, somebody goes over there, a bunch of somebodies goes over there and meets the Rotarians with whom we've done the project. And then when we can get them to come here, what's that?
You said 2 minutes. You're doing my presentation.
I'm sorry. Okay, well, if I'm doing your presentation, then Larry's one of the guys that's been on several of these, and I wanted to show you what we see and what we do when we get over there. So Larry, come on down here. This is Larry Stone from Oklahoma City Rotary Club. And he's here with all of the other Stones, too, from the Woodward area.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. He told me that I needed to do a presentation, and my job is to make you all enthusiastic and make you want to give money to this. And I'm kind of a ringer because I think this is the best part of Rotary. That's why I'm here. But then he started doing all my stuff, so
It's okay, you can repeat again.
there's going to be a lot of repetition. As he said, my name is Larry Stone. I am a member of the Oklahoma City Rotary Club. And I don't use Windows anymore. I'm a member of the Oklahoma City Rotary Club, and I'm actually kind of a ringer because the idea here is, I joined Rotary for International. International is the whole deal for me. A little bit of background, I grew up in Woodward. That's my brother up there who's also in the Rotary Club in Woodward. My dad was one of the early members of the Woodward Rotary Club. I was an exchange student for Rotary to Norway. My wife was an exchange student to Brazil. That's how we met. So yeah, Rotary and International is cool. When I got into Rotary back in '99, it didn't take people very long to figure out what I was interested in. And Chuck didn't give you very much history, but back in the old days, he was the one that was holding together our international grants. We had, we do a few projects to build a water well in India or Pakistan or whatever, but that's kind of, each individual club did it, and he was trying to hold that together. I was involved doing that job for about 3 years, and I tried to take it to another level, not particularly successfully, but we did do some bigger projects where we got multiple clubs within the district to contribute to a couple of projects, and it did better. Bob Medley came along and he approached me because he had gone to a Rotary meeting in Livermore, California. How many people here go to makeups when you go travel? Do you actually go to? Yeah, I have a club in Washington, D.C. that they said they were going to start sending me a dues statement just because I always went there. Makeups are a wonderful place to make connections, and no matter, I'm going to show a little bias here, no matter what we do with all our projects, it seems like we're doing a lot of good, but we're actually doing more good for ourselves because it's about building connections. Everything is about building connections. And so when you go to a makeup, Bob goes to them every place he goes. I just saw where he was in Spain at a makeup where he found somebody who he thinks can work on a project. He was in Livermore and he sat next to a guy who was involved again with the one in Budapest, and that got things started. He came to me and said, can we do something with matching money? I said, yeah, I'll find the matching money. I did that, and he said, that's not what I wanted. I didn't want matching money, I wanted more people involved. So the next project we worked on, we got more people involved. We got with Chuck, we started getting more clubs involved. We started reaching out to these clubs in California, as well as a club in Sweden, the one in Hungary, which by the way is an all-English club. If you ever go to Budapest, they all speak English there, it's great. We actually, Oklahoma City Rotary actually had a joint meeting with these guys one time. They meet on Tuesdays at 7 o'clock. It's a 7 o'clock time difference, or a 7-hour time difference. So we did a Skype meeting together, that club and our club in Oklahoma City. So it's all about building the contacts. So as I say, I'm a little bit of a ringer because I think everything needs to be international. When you listen to me, you're not going to get any information on how to do this. You're not going to get any information on what you need to do. You're just going to feel good about what a wonderful organization you belong to. So Chuck asked me to just be a cheerleader. What does Rotary do in the world? And I'm going to throw in all kinds of things. This was an interesting project that we did 2 years ago in a little place called Piatra Neamt. It's a moderately sized city just on the edge of Transylvania. Very cool. In Romania. They're a relatively new club, but they decided that they really wanted to do something. They really wanted to do something that had some significance, and they had one member of their club who rode this thing all the way through. This is really an exciting project for me personally because we have certain groups that we work with periodically that help us provide equipment and all that, but what we really want is to have local equipment. This is the first project we did in Romania that's completely locally sourced. The medical equipment that we got, that sort of thing, we found a local vendor who was able to bring it in at a price, guarantee maintenance on this machinery, keep it all going. So the idea was to put in some pediatric monitoring equipment. This woman that you see here, the redhead, is the chief of staff in this hospital. I think I saw her smile for 3 seconds. She has that accent. You remember Natasha? Boris and Natasha? That's her. She was actually thrilled. We got the 3-second smile because Rotary was the first organization that had ever delivered for them. They had people come in all the time. We want to help. We want to do things. We're going to get going. Rotary was the first one that actually came to fruition that ended up with that machine that you stand there. The gentleman next to her is the one on their side who made all this thing go. The picture there with the little certificates, these guys took this very seriously. I have a metal medallion that commemorates this project. I have all kinds of artwork. They had a special banquet for us. That is their club president on the right, Bob Medley in the center, and me. These are in no particular order. One of the early projects we worked on was in Uganda with bed nets, trying to deal with mosquito abatement because they have a horrible malaria problem. They lose all kinds of kids to malaria. One of the things that has been difficult for us to understand is in the Polio Plus project, people didn't understand why Africa wasn't on board. Why didn't they just jump in on this? This was a big deal. And the reason is because they lose a few people to polio, they lose millions to malaria. So what we did, this was the first project that we did where we tried to get donations from lots of different clubs within our district. We didn't go outside, it was just within our district. But we were successful in passing out these bed nets. They cost $4 a piece. But a lot of these families can't afford that. They lose children, they lose time at work, they lose their job. There are all kinds of problems. We were able to pair. That's actually my wife standing in the middle of all those dark faces. She went over there and delivered those for us. She was on a medical mission and did that, but it was highly successful. One of the elements with this project that was really exciting is the Rotarians who conceived of it on the other end also included money for bicycles. Why? Because they had runners who were going from village to village tracking the malaria outbreaks to make sure that the bed nets were in the right places. They eventually managed to dropped their malaria rates by a factor of 90% within about 6 months, which had a huge impact, you see, especially for girls. Girls are the ones who get stuck at home taking care of sick people. Girls are the ones who have to quit school because mom's sick. Girls are the ones that really take it on the chin here. So this was a big deal. We've got a project that's still ongoing in the San Blas Islands in Panama. This is a very isolated community of Indians. I don't know whether anybody's seen it. I talked to somebody who recognized it. Do you remember when you were in school, you might have run across a book that had a wood cutting of Columbus meeting the Indians in the New World? And in that wood cutting, there's one dark Indian and one light Indian. Anybody remember that? I haven't been able to find it for this. These are the guys that have one dark Indian and one light Indian. Their population, in the general population, albinism, no pigment, occurs 1 in about 57,000 times. On this island, it occurs 1 in 37. So you'll see this little girl sneaked in here. It happens 1 in 37 times there. And so we originally went to help them with skin cancer. They were having a horrible problem with skin cancer. It turned out that that was a social change that we just couldn't manage. But what we did discover is that they have a terrible time with scabies. Anybody know what that is, since we don't have to deal with it? It's a little bug, a little insect that burrows under the skin, causes horrible infections. And apparently scabies love albinos, love them. So these kids were absolutely miserable. We've been successful in virtually eradicating scabies in the little test islands, and now this project is expanding into the larger islands. So that's going to be a very successful one. Kluge. We've done tons with Kluge, and Kluge was actually the first place that we had real success with a big grant. So there's a banquet table over there. The guy on the left is from Kitakoi, that is in Constantinople. That's their club. There were a couple there. There are representatives there from Kluge. There's Bob Medley. Mary Jane Calvi, I need to mention her as well. Bob came in and he has done a ton of stuff. He's really promoted this. Mary Jane has followed on, and she is probably right now the foremost expert in the nuts and bolts. If you want to get involved in this, you need to talk to Mary Jane, because she can get you hooked up. She's also the only person I've seen who, when Chuck says he doesn't like a project, she doesn't care. She does not care. So if you like a project and you think you can sell it to Mary Jane, that's the way to go. Chuck won't be here forever. Mary Jane may be. I'm in there. There's another one from Kitakoi, but this was the first project that we did where we found that we could hook up with a lot of different countries and make this work. When Chuck and I were doing this before, he asked me to share some of what we've learned. When Chuck and I were doing this before, one of the things that we found, there was a project that I think Chuck was in charge of, it may have been me, where we did a water well in Pakistan. And after the well was done and everything was good, we found out that the guy on the other end, a good Rotarian, had in fact substituted used parts for all the new ones. And his attitude was, so what? The well works. I get that. However, that's not what we paid for, right? I had a situation where we did rubella vaccinations in India, and we found out after the fact that the person who was involved on the other end, who actually happened to be a past district governor, had charged 10 times the going rate for the vaccine. So we only vaccinated 1/10 the girls that we should have been able to. After that, we changed the way we looked at these projects entirely. We do not do any projects where we don't know people. And the only way to know people is to go there. So every one of our projects that we do, we have representatives who go on site and meet these people. So we're no longer dealing with Rotarians who are just kind of out there somewhere. Most of them are friends. Like I still get emails periodically from all those people at that table. It's a whole different deal when you can shake hands. Chuck was talking about Henning. Henning Sorkness is his name. He's a Danish immigrant who moved to Hungary. I understand his Hungarian's not that good. I don't think his Danish is that good. That guy is a mover and a shaker. He knows everybody, everywhere, and put us in contact with all kinds of things. I've been on several of these trips, and it's wonderful to actually get to meet the people who signed the document. just because we're taking people everywhere, and I want to encourage everybody in this room to consider whether you would like to participate in one of these projects and actually go. We're generally hosted by Rotarians. That means that you get to go on a fairly nice level. You know, you're not going to find yourself in a puddle every time. Occasionally it's kind of interesting. On this particular trip, it's just how this works out. I volunteered to go. My wife suggested that she might want to go. I said it's not going to be very much fun. She said, well, what would make it fun? And so I wrote to them and I said, is there anything cool to do there? And they said, I tell you what, if you come, we will tour around with you. So the president of this club, who's one of the guys sitting at the table, actually took Bob Medley and my wife and I around Transylvania. And just for interest, that's Dracula's castle. I just thought it was cool. But that's how it is. You build these relationships, you eat with these people. In Romania, you drink moonshine with all of them. It's awesome. It's a bonding experience. The last time I was there, we went to a little place by the name of Sexart, just outside of Budapest. Sexart has an old hospital, but they have an active Rotary Club that wants to do things. So they took us in and they said, we need some help with our maternity ward. This is the maternity ward. So we had a project where we bought medical machinery. In particular, they needed an ultrasound because they didn't have one. This is, by the way, any of you people who have any recent experience with labor and delivery, my wife's an obstetrician. That's the intake there over on the left. So when you come in and you think you're in labor, that's where they put you. It's not nice, but it's getting better, and Rotary is part of why it's getting better. I threw this project in just for fun because it's in line with some of what we've been talking about today. Just outside Cluj, they built a dairy, and this was a joint project between one of the Rotary clubs, not us. We had nothing to do with it, but Rotary and Heifer International. Are you familiar with Heifer? Heifer's a charity that's based out of Arkansas, and what they do is they set up people with livestock. So you might get the thing at Christmas that says, you know, give somebody some chickens or a goat or a cow. So we met one of the farmers there who Heifer had given him a cow that prior to that, he hadn't had anything except, of course, moonshine. They all have moonshine. But he didn't have anything to do. He had managed to raise this cow, breed the cow. He had 2 other calves. Part of this deal was he had to give the calves away, but Heifer was getting ready to give him another one. So this had dramatically changed his life. The problem that these farmers had was they didn't have anywhere to share or to sell their products. And so Rotary came in on the backs of Heifer and they built this dairy facility that sells all kinds of dairy products to that corner of Cluj. It's enormously successful, and they fed us with a lot of cheese. A lot of cheese. But this is the sort of thing that we're doing out in the world. I'm obviously biased towards international, but what I will tell you is any money that you put towards international projects, you get huge bang for your buck. We work really hard locally, but you know, a playground might cost $100,000 here. We can do something comparable for $5,000 over there. So you help a lot of people very, very quickly. You have a huge impact, and you get to travel and meet people. Because the most important thing is Rotary is about relationships. We act like it's about good works. Good works are just the vehicle through which we build relationships with others. People who know each other, people who eat together, don't fight wars. That's what Rotary is about. Is how do we come together with people we don't know and understand them a little better. So these are some of the major players. That's Bob Medley there on the right. Mary Jane Calvi, who I thought was going to be here, but she didn't make it today. And then Henning Cirkness, the one that we deal with so often, and then my wife and me. This was actually the farm where the guy had the extra cows, and yeah, we're not drinking there. I brought back a bottle of moonshine. It's amazing. It's amazing stuff. It dripped in my luggage, and it turned everything white. And they drink this. They make it and they drink it. But that's part of the experience. That's part of what we get to know. I still have it. If anybody wants it, I have it. So I'd like to encourage everybody here to get involved in the international side. It doesn't take very much. Small clubs that have just a very limited budget for this, if, you know, $100, $200, $300. We've always got projects. You can contact anybody on the committee. I'm available. Bob, you can talk to Chuck, you can talk to Mary Jane. But if you have a project that you're interested in, or if you'd like to know what projects we have, don't hesitate to contact one of us and we will get you hooked up. And do consider actually being part of the team to go on site. That can be a life-changing event. I think part of why Mary Jane is involved is because she went to the one you just saw and she hasn't stopped since. So, questions? Great. That was supposed to be short, was it?
That was good enough?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, now we're going to talk about kind of what's involved with the nuts and bolts of kind of doing this. See if I can figure out where to start this. Turn this thing back on. I don't know what it is. I must be allergic to orange. My allergies have just been killing me since I got out here. Okay, to get qualified to do a global grant is the same as to get qualified to do a district. You got to attend the grant management seminar, you're here, you're qualified forward and backwards. So those of you that still have stuff you want to do this year, you're qualified for this year and you're qualified for next year. The MOU signed by the president and by the president-elect. And you have to support the Rotary Foundation, and most everybody in here does. I think most everybody in here does. 85% of our membership are in clubs that are 100% sustaining member clubs. And only 65% of our clubs are, but in terms of the membership, most of our membership supports the foundation.
Chuck,
Sir?
do the Stillwater Club sign a memorandum of some understanding?
Well, there's some things we have to tweak in it.
Just keep in mind, July 1, who's in charge?
Well, I just thought they might object to signing an MOU.
You know, Larry was joking about a little bit about, you know, Mary Jane's the only one that, when I said, nah, we're not doing that project, she says, that's not necessarily the case. And the thing about Rotary structure is, for the next few months, me and when Kevin comes on, we are actually the only officers of Rotary International that are represented in the district that have a term that lasts longer than a year. Rotary's power structure is that the governor is an officer of Rotary International and the Rotary Foundation chair is an officer of Rotary International. But the Rotary Foundation chair trumps the authority of the district governor when it comes to grants. And so in theory, well, in fact, the Rotary Foundation chair has the power to either accept or reject any project that's presented. Just so you know, those of us that are in power like everyone to know that we're in power. But that's kind of Mary Jane and I have a couple of on-running disputes over projects that she swears are going to make projects, and I swear are dogs and are never going to happen. And she's waiting me out till she gets Kevin, because she thinks Kevin's easier than I am. This year we're going to have roughly $66,000 worth of money. It's going to be matched dollar for dollar. When you look at the leverage that we typically get, we get leverage in about the level of 10 to 1 when we do one of these projects. So we're going to be involved in projects that are going to produce good in the neighborhood of between $600,000 and $750,000, depending on who we partner up with. As you can imagine, when we're spending that kind of money, we have a lot of rules and we have a lot of regulations. And Rotary has changed in the era he was talking about earlier, like we did the mosquito nets. Right now, we wouldn't be allowed to do the mosquito nets anymore. because you can't just give money to people to do good anymore with a global grant. You can with a district grant, but you can't with a global grant. Rotary has found, as is virtually every other organization that does good work in the world, has found out that when everybody owns something, nobody owns something. It's a shocking statistic, and those of you who actually heard Kevin talk about the meeting we were at with the new president of Water For. And he said they went back and did a study of their wells, and they found out that 80% of them no longer function 2 years later. Rotary has found that between 80 and 90% of all of the wells that we've drilled and all of the times we've drilled in Rotary no longer function. And that's what prompted Rotary's change to sustainability being a requirement to participate in a global grant. The other big change that Rotary made, and we're going to talk about it a little later, but I'm going to tell you again about it now, is that we no longer do projects anywhere that weren't originated by the Rotary Club in the destination. Now, I call these mission projects. And in the old days of global or of district grants or matching grants, your members would always have somebody that was on a mission trip somewhere. And there was a church that needed a well, or an orphanage that needed a well, or a community center that needed a well, or whatever needed a well. And they came back and they say, man, this is a great deal, we need to do this, and can we round up some money and go get a matching grant and we'll go drill us a couple wells. And everybody was fine with that. The problem is, there wasn't any Rotary involvement in it at all. And more important, when you ask somebody in the community where the well came from, well, the church gave us the well, the Red Cross gave us the well, or these guys over here gave us the well. Nobody talked to Rotary at all. And so Rotary decided after this period of time that we weren't getting credit. Remember, he was talking about hide our light under the bushel a little earlier today. We need to be talking to the communities about what we're doing in the communities so they know our presence in the community. If we're going to be doing good in the world, we need to be getting credit for doing good in the world. And so Rotary's come up with this notion is if the answer to where'd you get this isn't Rotary, it's not a Rotary project anymore, and we're not going to do it. The other thing they found out was that lots of times these mission projects were going out there drilling wells and spending money in places that it may be good for whoever the direct beneficiary was, but the community itself would have preferred that something else be done with that money, that a collection system might have been developed. And so what Rotary has done is they've developed this infrastructure now that matches the Rotary Club on site with the Rotary Club here, or all of the other partners, where we all participate on a project that was designed by the people that the project's supposed to benefit. So when you talk about we're going to do a project someplace, if that project didn't originate with the Rotary Club someplace, it's not eligible for a global grant. It has to be originated by the people that are going to be the beneficiary. The Rotary Club did. Now, in addition just to the technical parts we're talking about, the other thing about it is they're also responsible for doing all the follow-up that's necessary to make sure that all the rules that we talked about were being provided. Every Rotary grant, global grant, has to be sustainable. There has to be something built into the grant that provides for this thing to survive in perpetuity. So it either has to be given to or owned by somebody who has an agreement with us, or the Rotary Club there, to maintain it, to have funds for maintaining it. You can either build the costs of maintenance into it, or you can have a guarantee from the manufacturer, or I think somebody said something, I was yesterday, talked about you can, Kevin was talking about it, where you can like maybe charge a couple of pennies for water that goes into a community fund that takes care of this. But if there's not a methodology to provide for the training, the care, and the sustainability of whatever it is you're doing, it's not qualified. If you're doing a medical kind of a product or a humanitarian kind of a project where you're saying we're going to vaccinate 300 kids over the next 5 years, somebody's got to collect the records to show that these 300 kids got vaccinated. If you say you're going to train 5 different communities in sanitation, somebody's got to demonstrate that the team went out there did this actual work and come back and document. Because your grant has to say this is what we're gonna do, and then you have to provide the mechanism by which you do this actual tracking. So it's a whole lot more complicated than it once was, but if you don't have a partner over there that's doing all of this kind of stuff, then you're out on the hook when the deal gets turned back on you for not reporting, and your district doesn't get to do any more grants. So that's kind of, in the nuts, how this is different from what most everybody was used to in the past. And remember this, if you don't turn in your reports, you don't get to do projects. Okay, the minimum global grant is $30,000. The minimum global grant is, the minimum budget is $30,000. And it's matched dollar for dollar. The minimum Rotary grant is $15,000. So if you're looking at a minimum budget of $30,000, you got $15,000 minimum grant. It's matched dollar for dollar. Okay, that's a project that's done 100% with what? What's the three-letter word for what we do with our money? Starts with a D. There you go. There you go. If both people involved are using nothing but DDF, then you can do a $30,000 project. Because it's matched dollar for dollar by the Rotary Foundation. The problem is, unless you, as the rich guy, wants to actually put most of that money in, they're not going to be able to do that kind of project because they're not going to have as much DDF as you've got. From a practical point of view, we found that between $50,000 and $65,000 is about where most projects settle in terms of doable. Between the DDFs available and club money. Because club money is only matched 50 cents on the dollar. So by the time you work all this in, you're typically looking at a project in the $50,000 to $60,000 range. A $30,000 project is very atypical. We do or have, but we would seldom put all of the money in DDF ourselves. We would seldom do a project that nobody else put any money in. I wouldn't say that we won't, because I'm leaving this committee. But we haven't ever, and we probably won't. Now, we put more than $15,000 in a project, but they were much larger projects. We've never found anything we wanted to fund badly enough that we put up all the money. It's an online application process. Everything is done online. All the reporting's done online, all the applications are done online. When you become president, when you sign in by Rotary, you go and click Foundation. And under Foundation, over on the far left, there's, on the very bottom, it says Grant Application Module. You click on that, and it comes up and says Start an Application. And there's also an example of an application on there that says Start an Application. And you simply start an application by going in, saying the project's name, saying your club's name, putting your information in, and at that point it's assigned a number, and it's an official application. And then you can go about working out your business later of filling the rest of this stuff on. All of them have to meet the areas of focus. Remember the areas of focus, the 6 areas of focus that we talked about yesterday, and I will hit them here in a minute. It has to be sustainable, and this is the hardest part of the application to complete. The great thing is we've now done about 9 of them, so we got the verbiage down pretty good. And so if you're looking at a project, you say, well, how do we deal with this to make it sustainable? We have some examples to say, well, you know, if you went and did some training in this area over here and did this over here, then we think you can probably get it sustainable. The most important thing is it's got to involve Rotary clubs in 2 districts. 2 districts, 2 sets of Rotary clubs. May have 5 Rotary clubs. But there is no project if there's not an indigenous Rotary club that's initiating the project. They got to be the folks that initiate the project. Well, why is that? No, this is Bob starting a project in Madrid. We're going to have a project probably come out of the Madrid area or the Barcelona area, one or the other. I accuse Bob of only doing projects where he wants to go vacation. But he's a tremendous ambassador for us. Okay, we got ahead of myself in some of these kinds of things. In terms of doing the project, remember we said the international the international sponsors have to provide at least 30% of the money. Why do you think that is?
Chuck, that means that the international sponsors, are those people outside? the-
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Well, it's two reasons. One, it's to keep organizations from essentially funding themselves, taking their DDF and just building a project at home. The second thing is it makes you prove that this is truly an international project rather than simply a local project. In our case, it's really great, and we're going to talk about this a little bit when Jeff shows up here, but because we have so many partners, we have access to a lot of money around the world. You can't actually raise the money from the beneficiary. It can't come from other grants or contributions can credit, but contributions can be credited to the donor. You can have outside parties that donate. We just did a project in Peru where a non-Rotarian group gave us $10,000. That was matched by the Rotary Foundation. Okay, these are the 6 areas of focus. If it doesn't fit into one of these 6 areas of focus, you can't do it. Now, there are very specific guidelines on these 6 areas of focus. They're on your thumb drive over in the grants deal. I'm not going to go through them today because we just simply haven't got the time unless you all want to stay till 2 o'clock. But Rotary has these on their website, and you have them on your thumb drive. And there is a separate little PowerPoint presentation about each one of these areas of focus to give you an idea of what fits and what doesn't fit in terms of the things they want to do. Okay, we've talked about both of these kinds of things. The global grant has to have local Rotarian participation, and the final project must be identified by Rotary. Now, in the olden days, I'm going to go back to this Rotarian participation. In the olden days, when we wanted to do a project someplace, we'd go put it all together, and we'd go by the local Rotary Club, and we'd say, would you sign these for me, please? And that was the end of it, and we did the project. Nowadays, we can't do that. Nowadays, they have to be intimately involved in the project. And the ideal situation is that the first thing that they do is start with a community assessment of what they need. And they do this assessment of what they need and who's going to be the participants and what kind of benefits it's going to do, and then they start looking for people that are going to come help them. You see how this is different from ground up instead of donor down. And this is what Rotary is trying to do. It's trying to build capacity in the Rotary clubs that need the money and make sure that the community involved is actually wants what it is that we're trying to do. I just said it. How about that? I actually got it right. Successful projects meet the community's needs. They're sustainable. They involve the partner. They have a plan, and they have stewardship of funds. We don't like being stolen from. And as Larry was telling you just a little while ago, that happens more than occasion. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm going to let you look at them. Hope you read faster than I talk. But this is how a project goes together. Competitive bidding is something that you have to pay attention to on both ends of the project. We have been kicked back on 2 separate occasions for having specified a vendor because we knew they could deliver. And Rotary required us to go back and get competitive bids on all this. I think you faced that, didn't you? Too. And they check on real prices. They want us to have bids. Okay, when we set the goals, and these are primarily for the sustainability, but they have to be measurable. They have to be sustainable, they have to be qualitative and quantitative. You have to have a baseline, and you have to have a method for determination. Now, there's a PowerPoint on all of this also. It's in your drive. I'm not going to cover a lot of this stuff because I don't expect that 3 or 4 of you are probably going to do one this year. And so when you get to the point that you want to do it, you give us a call, we'll come down and we'll give you an individual tutoring on how to fit your thing into this kind of stuff. Okay, we all pretty much know about conflicts of interest. Now again, when we get down to the stewardship, you notice we talk about Rotarian supervision. Okay, if we don't have Rotarians on site, how are we gonna supervise anything? We're not gonna be running Rotarians back and forth from the United States to look at our various projects. Some of them are in conflict, there is, you know, we're not gonna be doing it. We need Rotarians on site to be paying attention. Okay, we've talked about all of this kind of stuff. It's, you know, it's the exact same, these are the exact same rules that you're gonna have on the district grant. All right, let me,
Chuck,
sir,
on the global grant that we're just finishing up on,
yes,
is that, I think that was a $72,000 project that we're kicking in half and the Rotary's kicking in half, or is the 72 our share?
72,000 is, it's, about 20% of it is DDF money, and so it's matched dollar for dollar. The rest is various club monies that's matched 50 cents on the dollar. Oh, there's where it is. I'm Windows challenged anymore. Let me show you how this works. And you have one of these in your spreadsheet too, but this kind of shows you how you make a project. And it's basically just a calculator that lets you fit in the various money you've got to see whether or not you're meeting the requirements that you have to do. And what it'll tell you when after you finished it out, if you look at the bottom, it'll show you down here what the grant amount is. It'll show you what the percentage of the international, of the outside international money is. Now you don't count grant money when you look at the percentage. You only account DDF and club money. And so from a project point of view, you're better off to have club money looking for your 30% than you are looking for DDF as you go looking for your money. Because your club money only gives you club money plus 50 cents, whereas your DDF gives you dollar for dollar. So you're only using half as much DDF, which lowers your percentage. If you're looking at this, who can tell me one thing that stands out right now about this particular grant, good or bad? Look at this number right here. What's that number supposed to be?
30.
No, 15. That's the grant amount. Has to be 15,000. So what this is, it's a sum of the dollar for dollar matches and the 50 cent for on the dollar matches. If I want to go up here, put in some DDF. See how that works? Now we got 17,000 and we're at 44%, so we're still in good shape to have a grant. Yeah.
So just out of curiosity, it's a dollar for dollar match, but can you contribute more? Can the district give less than a dollar per dollar match? So if you wanted to contribute 20,000 and have the district only contribute 10,000, could you do that?
That's back. I think you're confused on the match. Okay, DDF is the money that we get back from the money we give that they're going to match dollar for dollar.
Okay.
Okay? And then the rest of this money is club money that they can put in. So the club can put in all the amount of money that they want to do. Like we're working on a project right now with the Edmond Rotary Club. And we're going to put $1,000 worth of DDF in, but they're going to put in $5,000 worth of club money. Because the people that have asked them to participate have calculated that that's what they have to meet both their $15,000 grant minimum and their 30% international money. And then they're putting up all the rest of the money.
The matches, Chuck, are World Fund money coming from the Rotary Foundation.
Right.
Right. It's not matches from.
Yeah, right. The matches from the World Foundation, World Fund, rather than from
Got it.
the rest of it. Okay, let's play a little game with the time we've got left, just to make,
Chuck, where do we get that formula?
it's on your thumb drive. It's on your thumb drive. It's down in, you go down to pets and then into foundation, and then the foundation. Okay, let's,
Is there a running list of international projects?
there is not a, well, no, there's not a running list. There is a list of projects of people that are looking for sponsors.
Where do we find that list?
It's on Rotary, under foundation. We looked at that yesterday. Remember where that, the exact?
It's on My Rotary and then,
Ideas. And then there'll be a list of people soliciting all kinds of projects, all kinds of projects. What we do is typically when we're doing a project, we notify all the club presidents that we've got a project going on this and thus and so place. Is it something you think your club would be interested in? And then for the last couple of years, we've done projects that every club in the district has put in some money on kind of a per capita basis. We've been doing this on strictly a voluntary kind of basis, and if it's not something your club thinks they want to do, they just need to say, hey, don't send us those messages. But most of the clubs do participate, and it's really kind of cool, I think. But it's what we do is we find all the outside money, see what else we need, and then go pick off the rest. The clubs can join together and say, we're doing a project, we need $5,000, can you give us $5,000? I can give you a hint. Rich clubs are, the Stillwater clubs are rich, the Big Edmond Club is rich, Midwest City is actually pretty rich. And there's a bunch of clubs out there that are easy touches. Midtown's an easy touch, Boulevard's an easy touch. Ponca City's actually a pretty easy touch. So, it's not hard to round up money for a good project. Okay, what we're going to try here is we're going to talk about making sure you understand kind of the difference between global grants and district grants. Those of you that are academicians will catch on to the key pretty fast. Okay, we talked about that the district grants are basically smaller grants. They can be used for lots of things that are managed by the districts. Global grants are larger. They got to be at least 30,000. They got to be sustainable. They have to align with one of the 6 areas of focus. Package grants was an experiment that didn't work, and thank goodness they threw it away, and we don't have to mess with it again. Okay, the Rotary Club in India wants to send medical equipment to a hospital in the Congo. Which is a better fit for it? Who thinks district grant? Who thinks global grant?
What's the price?
That's the price.
Let's say it's 30,000.
Doesn't matter.
To initiate.
But it has to be initiated by a club in Congo, right?
Yep. Okay, this is a district grant type project. This is a district grant type project. When you just send something someplace without a plan to deal with it once it's there, it's in the district grant category. In other words, if you're just given money for some good reason, that's a district grant kind of a deal. So what do we think, district or global? Global. So you guys catch on fast, don't you? Rule of thumb is if it's really short, it's district, and if it's really long, it's global. What do we think about that?
District.
District? Any guess on that one? Okay, we don't talk about this because we don't fund them. But under the global grant, you can fund scholarships. Under the district grant, you can fund scholarships for that matter. But under the, and we don't, incidentally. under the global grant, you can fund scholarships. The scholarships still have to be at least $30,000. They have to be master's level work, and they have to be in one of the 6 avenues of service, and the person has to be in that field before they can apply for it. We don't do any of those.
How would the Peace Fellow thing apply to that though?
I'm sorry?
How would Peace Fellows?
Peace Fellows are funded directly by the Global Fund, by Rotary International itself, and it doesn't reflect us at all. That was an old package grant. Now, some things can be joint. For an example, you could put what they call a vocational training team, which is like a one-time group of people going over to do training in some deal. Like you could send a bunch of nurses over to train nurses someplace as part of a hospital project that you're putting in. And so you can mix and match some things that would normally look like they were a district grant kind of thing. If you roll them in under the global grants umbrella, you can kind of slide them back in under the backside of it. I want to wrap up with Jeff, and I'm sorry we put you into the lunch yard, but Jeff's club just finished our first local global grant. And I thought you'd find it interesting for him to talk about how his club went about it, how it worked out for them, whether they thought it was difficult or not so difficult to cover these kinds of things that they were having to cover. And it's all yours. You want a microphone?
So,
You can
not
have mine.
pretty loud. So I stand between this crowd and lunch, is that correct? This will be very quick. If Larry was the ringer for international, I'm the ringer for local. I've been a Rotarian for 30 years. Everything I've always done has been locally focused. We did the Spin Your Wheels bike event for 16 years, raised, I think, $650,000. We do a Hal Ullman scholarship every year. We give away 22 $4,000 scholarships. But in 2011, I was introduced to one Rotarian who's not been mentioned today, is Hal Stevens. Hal's a force to be reckoned with within our district. And he challenged us to form a gang of 6 that did a project down in Bogota, Colombia for an electrocardiograph machine. And I think that was the first time my eyes were really open to the international scope of Rotary. Last year, in that corner back there, we talked with Mary Jane, Bob, and Chuck about doing a project here locally. And I said, can we do that internationally? And they said, we think you can. Fast forward to May of last year, May of 15, we all met at Lake Hefner, and we had representatives from Crossings Clinic. A good friend of mine, Jill Cox, works there as a volunteer, and her passion is eye care. That's what she's done all of her life. And she said, Jeff, we have a need for medical equipment, for eye exams, for the uninsured and the underinsured of Oklahoma City. And we currently, if you guys could come up with like $250, I said, I think we can do a grant. So we sat down, had a very long meeting, and basically, I think Bob and Chuck said, shoot for the sky. We put together a project based on recommendations from the optometrists and ophthalmologists that volunteer at the Crossings Clinic for $72,000 worth of equipment. We originally thought we were going to ask for like 15 or 20. Bob and Chuck both said you got to hit that $30,000 threshold. I said, let's just go for everything they really need. And we shot for $72,000. Mary Jane Calvey, if she was here today, I would have brought her a bouquet of roses. She was so good about helping me go through the whole process, the grant application itself. And it went seemingly without any hitches. We submitted our grant application. It was, I think, the end of November of last year, and before Christmas, Ken Waterbury responded back, your grant has been accepted. I think the first email I saw was from Chuck. He goes, wow, I've never seen one go through this quickly. They had some questions we had to answer. Creating the checking account was a breeze. Our club treasurer is also a banker. he sends a snapshot whenever I ask for one, then I can send up to Ken if he wants to see something, but that was a breeze doing that. We have the sponsorship of 4 European clubs and 1 Colombian club, I believe.
Right.
And everything is going, it should be fully funded by the end of this, I think by the end of, well, by the end of next week, we have all of our monies in. Everything's coming in real quick through wires and everything. Our club, I knew we had to be the seed money. We pledged $10,000. That's for a club of 35 members. We got 2 members to sign up for $2,500 each. Another Rotarian in our club gave us $1,000, and a friend of the club gave us $1,000. Our board then decided, like, we will fund the rest, but we asked everybody in the club, if you'd like to participate, we'd love for you to. The club wasn't originally to take our own budgetary money and make up the difference, and it's, the club's doing it on its own, so it's 100% participation, it looks like. The other exciting thing, Hal was involved, and he reached out to the entire district, 33 clubs in our district, is that correct? I think we're gonna have 100% participation. So it's pretty exciting how the whole system worked. I thought that once you get used to the website and navigating that, it went pretty well, but a lot of emails back and forth, but very satisfactory doing it. We're excited about our next project.
So you do it again.
Janice and Alice were on our committee. Janice said, what are we gonna do next year? And I said, maybe go for something bigger. So the Crossings Clinic is part of the HAU, which in Oklahoma City is the Health Alliance for the Uninsured. So you have got 17 or 18 different clinics in Oklahoma City that are seeing people on a regular basis. None of them are offering eye care. And this is something where you get to do early diagnosis of diabetes, glaucoma, eye disease. And we think it's going to be significantly change a lot of people's lives. They were seeing about 600 people a year. We hope it's going to go up to over 1,000 people a year. The next part of the project we would like to do is expand it, possibly going out into our district or figure out a way to bring district people in to see the clinic. So it's going to be exciting. Any questions? Let's go eat.
Well, not quite. You're not allowed to
So if you are staying for the afternoon session, there is lunch for you out front.